Good evening, White Sox fans, and welcome to the latest edition of FutureSox Hot Takes and Heaters. It is the FutureSox MLB centric podcast. Today is October the 1st, man. We are in the throes of postseason baseball. Unfortunately, the White Sox are not, but it's been a while since we've been here. Unfortunately, I have been traveling, and as a matter of fact, I'm preparing to get back on a plane tomorrow morning. But we were here, just to kind of talk about the end of the season and, kind of try to prognosticate and take a look ahead at some things. But Jake and I are going to spend some time this evening. By the way, that guy over there,
It's mirrored. You got to remember that.
he's my co-host, Jacob Thome, who's likes to hide behind his microphone. But
Forgot how my setup was. There we go.
yeah, so there he is. You can see his eyeballs. But anyway, yeah, man, we're gonna try to dig into this thing and see if we can't kind of take a look at the season. Maybe give out some grades along the way tonight, and take a look ahead and see if we can't figure out where this thing might go a little bit. At least throw some ideas out there, and hopefully the folks in the chat will have some interesting ideas as well. Speaking of which, I'd like to say quick hi to James Hesterman, who's in the chat right now. Awesome dude. Runs White Sox Debating Cage on Facebook. Pretty good Facebook page. If you're a White Sox fan, go check that out. But how's it going, Jake, man? How's things been since I haven't talked to you in a couple weeks?
Hang in there. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I want to ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
You do know you're supposed to travel out of this town or out of this area when it's, like horribly cold, not in the heart of summer, right?
Man, I gotta take my opportunities when I get them. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. So the last trip that I took was my anniversary trip. So, anniversary falls on the same day every year. If you're not aware, I know you're a young man who's not married yet, but got to keep the old wifey happy. Happy wife, happy life. There's some truth to be said in that. But hey, good evening, James. Glad to see you. Thanks for checking in. But yeah, and then now this one is a Vegas trip that we're leaving for tomorrow morning. I've got a couple friends that are going to see Double Nickels here. One of them while we're away on this vacation, and one of them pretty much right in the same week. So 55 birthdays to them, as well as a friend of mine who's standing up in a wedding this weekend out there. So we just decided to make it a big group thing and everybody go and have a good time. So, sometimes the cookie crumbles that way. But you're right, man. I would definitely love to get away when, I don't know, the frozen tundra has set in here in northern Illinois. So,
especially when you're going to Vegas, it's hot there at this point. I guess it's a little cooler. It's October. I keep forgetting that, but
yeah, I think we're looking at high temperatures in the 80s most of the time we're going to be there, maybe even, upper 70s, which is fine by me, man. I just got back from Cancun where it was, Satan's booty hole for a better portion of the time we were down there. But, the equator and whatnot, even though it wasn't as terrible as it normally is when we go this time of year, because we saw a lot of overcast and rain. And the crazy thing was typically seaweed season is usually over when we go, but they had some storms push all that sargassum back in, so the beaches were kind of not awesome and smelled like a sewer sometimes because of that. Oh, the sargassum's awful, dude. It smells terrible. So, but anywho, let's what do you say, man? Let's get into some White Sox stuff.
yeah, let's do our jobs.
Yeah, enough with the small talk and the catching up. I wanted to, I guess, start with the coaching staff a little bit because the news right now in most recent days is that there's been a bunch of coaches that have not been asked to return next year, and it sounds like the White Sox are going to give our manager Will Venable an opportunity to bring in the guys that he wants to bring in to do those jobs. There were a few surprises on that list not coming back, but yeah, before we get into the player stuff, let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think about some of the coaching moves, guys not being brought back, and what direction do you think Will Venable is going to want to get into?
Yeah, it was interesting. Not, I don't know about entirely surprised, but interesting for sure. Cat's leaving this year is interesting just because I think obviously he survived technically five managers now. Um, and it's interesting that, you know, this is the year that kills him, but, not it's he's a guy who I think is a talented pitching coach, but obviously the results haven't been there. Is that his fault? I don't know. I mean, you look at the pitchers he's had to work with, and it's not a greatly talented group. And you could say the same for Marcus Timms, who has only been here a couple of years now. Obviously, was brought in by Pedro, but the offense for the first year and a half of his tenure wasn't great, and then it turns around in the second half. But obviously, that wasn't enough to keep him. And then Burgoyes and Butera are also gone. I do think it's not impossible that this was maybe wanted to be done last year for Venable, but the contracts were a little bit interesting. From what I heard, understand they both didn't get fired; they were just chosen not to be contract extended. So I don't know if that's a Jerry thing. Jerry is kind of notoriously for being a cheapskate. I don't know if that was it. I know obviously you had to pay off Pedro a little bit, so part of that makes me wonder, like, hey, is that the reason why they waited this year? But I don't hate it. I mean, Venable's going to get his own guys in here, and the Sox are in a weird position where, those two guys, you normally think of MLB coaches being the top of the top guys, but they really aren't. Bannister and Fuller are the two top guys. So an interesting move just in terms of timing, but I do think the contracts might have played into it.
Yeah, a lot of folks seem to be focusing on Katz being the guy that was kind of not. It was the most shocking, I guess, is what a lot of people are saying. But I got to be honest with you. In my opinion, Drew Butera being not offered a contract or an extension seemed a little bit weird to me, only because he was a guy who's only been here for a short time, and during his tenure was when they decided they wanted to load up on catching and throughout the entire organization. If we go back to the offseason, the big news during the offseason was the White Sox are just going to sign every single catcher available, known to man. Pardon me. By the way, I am getting over being sick while I was on vacation. Awesome stuff, by the way.
The
So my voice
worst.
is a little shot, but anywho, Drew Butera being a guy that just was part of that whole. I would imagine had some input on some of the things that were going on as far as picking up all these catchers throughout the system up and down. And then of course we've got two catchers at the major league level, and you could even consider Corey Lee after he was brought back third, that had some successes at the MLB level. And I don't know how much of that can be attributed to those guys just being who they are as ball players, or how much of it can be attributed to Drew Butera and some of the other guys on the coaching staff having an impact on guys like Edgar Carroll and Kyle Teal. Now I know the big knock on Kyle Teal is he's not the best defensive catcher in the world, but the guy has got a great bat, and there are a lot of people out there that think he should change positions, so to speak. But I just found it very odd that with the success of catcher in the organization as a whole, that Drew Butera wouldn't be brought back.
Yeah, that's a questionable one. I know both of them defensively didn't light it up. I think Edgar was the worst framing catcher in the league, which we could talk about this too, with ABS becoming a thing that's not going to matter for Edgar, which is nice. Um,
I don't know that it won't matter, but it's going to matter a whole lot less.
well,
You know,
if they fully implement robo umps, then the framing won't
Yeah.
matter. But
Yeah, eventually.
or
I think
right.
next season is just gonna be the challenge system, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Right, so
But I would assume that they're eventually going to switch to robo umps. Would be my that's a bold assumption, I guess. But no, going back into it, I mean, both those guys I think struggled defensively. Both have really good arms. I mean, they both command the base pass pretty well. It's just some of the blocking stuff, some of the framing stuff wasn't towards the top. But I mean, it's tough, right? Because those two guys are really young. Like
putting it nice.
those, they're both under 23. Like, um, that's a I think there was a lot more to learn there. So yeah, I do think it's interesting that he was let go, but I agree that I think he was the most shocking of the four.
Right. And there's something to be said about giving a guy like Will Venable the first coach in a while that at least most fans that I've talked to feel like is actually manager material, as opposed to, or where most of the fan base can agree on that anyway. There's obviously still some people out there that think he's no better than Pedro. I've seen this a few times, which I think is laughable. But it's it's how do I say it? It's there's just something about the feeling of Will Venable being a guy who's not Pedro Grafal, who's not a rebuild coach, like what's his name? The guy before Tony. Why am I
Renteria.
drawing a blank? Thank you. Yeah, Renteria. And Renteria, I think, was a actually halfway decent coach, aside from some boneheaded in-game moves. But there's something to be said about giving. Sorry, I got distracted. I apologize that I'm rambling. There's something to be said about coaches being able to hire their own staff and bring in the people that they want and they feel are going to be the most successful around them, and kind of adapt to their philosophy. So we'll see how that goes. But having said so, what would you give? And James Coogan in the chat says he thought it was Ryan Fuller. I'm assuming he means that Ryan Fuller is.
I believe Jamie Wallace asked what coach worked with Colson in Arizona,
Oh,
and that
I'm
was
sorry, I
Ryan
missed
Fuller.
that. I
Nope,
gotcha.
you're all
Roger
good.
that. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was as well. Yeah, so let's talk about the coaches that were here this year, and what do you think the grading should be for the coaching staff as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be an A. I think it's hard to grade. Well, first of all, it's hard to grade because most of them have been fired. But I mean, Venable, I think he legitimately deserves Manager of the Year votes just because of where he was, or where this team was last year compared to this year, and the entire culture shift. And then I would assume we're including Ryan Fuller in that, and he's been a blessing for this organization. Obviously, I don't know if we've seen his full effects so far. In the White Sox organization. He has a lot to do with prospect development. Colson, though, is a huge part of that, as already brought up in chat, kind of tweaking his swing. And I don't necessarily know if Colson would have not done the same. I really do think a lot of Colson's success was just he needed to get out of Charlotte. There was just something like he just needed to get to the major leagues, and lo and behold, he did, and he showed out. Um, but obviously, there were mechanical tweaks that happened, and Ryan Fuller was a big part of that. So, um, yeah, I mean, I would give them an A. I think Bannister maybe. I think there's some disappointed feelings just because of the jumps that were brought between 23 and 24 with Banny, but the effects are going to be less severe with how obviously you have guys who first year with Bannister they change a bunch of stuff and there's not as much as that. And his like top project was Blake Larson, who ended up getting Tommy John. Like he didn't have a ton of new, there weren't a ton of new pitchers introduced in the system. So I don't just think any less of Banny after this year. And yeah, I was very impressed with everybody that was brought back.
Okay. I personally would probably I'll give Will a B plus just because I think that there was more to extract from this team. And that's not to take away from anything that he did do. Obviously, we'll get a little bit more into this later, but I mean, if you look at the team that they started the season out with compared to, and I'm talking specifically roster, I'm talking specifically guys that were on the 40 man. The difference between the start of the year and the end of the year. I still think there were some things that could have been pulled out of this team. But at the same time, you've got to give credit. Like you said, the culture was the biggest thing. It was the change for me. We're talking about a team that's been, how shall we say, playing with less than the amount of heart you would like to see. There's been some dissension in the ranks that's been well known and well talked about over the last few years. Just poor attitudes and guys not, really playing 100% all the time. Guys taking plays and days and games off, and just kind of going through the motions. And I think we've seen a lot more of guys just going out there and accepting that maybe they're not the best team in baseball, but they're still going to go out there and do the job to the best of their ability. And that's something that sounds like it should be simple, but as we know in any job in any place in the world, it's not necessarily true, right? It's not the easiest thing to accomplish. So I'm going to give him credit for that. I do think that there were some issues with guys who tended to look like they were doing things the right way and then maybe revert to some old bad habits here and there. And you almost had to kind of snap them out of it, which, again, something that might happen over the course of a 162 game season, but I think some of that could have been managed a little bit better. But for that reason alone is why I'm going to give him a B plus, and I'm not ready to give him an A quite yet. Ryan Fuller. I mean, you brought him up in your talk, so the new hitting coordinator. I got to give this guy credit where credit's due because if we're gonna specifically talk about anybody, it's gonna be Colson Montgomery. I know it's been talked about a lot over the last couple months of the season, but the fact of the matter is sending him down when he looked like, and a lot of people thought he was going to be a bust, but he looked like he was not himself. We talked about that injury that he sustained last year and how there was, some mechanics in his swing that just didn't look right. And taking a guy away from AAA and moving him back all the way to the rookie league in Arizona to straighten that out and get him to a point where now he's a almost 3.5 WAR player in just the last couple of months of the season, almost specifically on bat alone, is pretty fantastic stuff. So he definitely gets an A plus in my book. We've seen a lot of guys on this route. I won't say an A plus. Actually, I'm going to take that back to just a straight A, because we did see a lot of guys improve their approach at the plate as well. The reason he doesn't get a plus is there's a handful of guys that did not, and one of them happens to be one of my favorites that I've talked about every season, Lenyn Sosa. Even though he was the most consistent hitter on the team, he still doesn't take a walk. The one thing he does do that he does really well that I won't harp on him for not walking is he takes advantage. He takes advantage of pitches that he can hit in the zone. He doesn't spend a ton of time trying to chase bad pitches. So, you can say what you want about strikeouts. You can say what you want about not taking walks as far as, as a team as a whole. Chase Mydroth obviously kind of bumped that team rate up in walk percentage pretty much all on his own at times during the season. There's still some things that are left that they need to work on in that department. And we'll see, if Ryan Fuller has any more impact on that next season. Cats, I'm neither here nor there on him, honestly. There have been years where he's been dealt some good pitchers that I felt like he's needed to get more out of and hasn't. Some of those pitchers have moved on to other places and done things that they were not able to do in the White Sox. Some of them have moved on to other places and have kind of reverted a little bit and regressed. So I don't know how much of that is him and how much of that are the players. I do believe that he will probably always have a job with Lucas Giolito and his family somewhere down the road because they just have a connection that's unlike any other. But I'll leave that at that. As far as that goes, do you have anything else you want to talk about as coaching staff for the 2025 regular season?
Um, what are your thoughts on Jersley as a just as a pure third base coach in terms of his sends? Because I thought he got a lot of hate over this last year for sending guys when maybe some of the fan base didn't think that they should have been sent.
You want to know my honest opinion is I'm actually happy that they have somebody that's a little bit more on the aggressive side. Do I agree with every one of his sends? No. There have been times where I'm like, what are you thinking, dude? Because you got to be, you have to be aware of who that guy on the base is and who the guy at the plate is. And of course, the defense that you're playing against, right? When you're talking about sends and you're looking at, okay, does the ball in the outfield, does the guy who's taking that ball in the outfield, does he have a cannon? Is he going to be able to make this throw? Yes, no, indifferent, whatever. You have to be able to make that snap decision, but you should know before the ball is pitched who's on the base, who's in the field, what situation you're in. And there's been a couple of times where, yeah, I would say he muffed a few, but I think being aggressive and forcing teams to make plays paid off for the White Sox quite a few times during this season, and I think they scored quite a few runs that resulted in their aggressiveness. So yeah, I'm not mad at Jersh at all.
Yeah, I agree. I just remember he sent Talkman home and talk. It was a play that like Talkman like messed up his hamstring again, and there was some hate on White Sox Twitter. But I agree with you. I think he's they've been pretty aggressive, and I think there's it. It's better at that point to send those guys, especially with you're forcing them to make a trade or make a play.
Yeah, and James Hesperman says obviously Will likes Jersh. That is all. I mean, he must. He's one of the few guys that's being retained. So, and he's a guy who's been in the White Sox organization for a while. One of those guys who a lot of people thought was on the trajectory of becoming possibly a White Sox head coach. It didn't work out that way. I think it still might be in his future somewhere. I just don't know that it'll be with the White Sox, but supposedly a good baseball mind, and it's probably one of the reasons why they're keeping him around. All right, you want to move on to player grades, and we can even talk a little bit about GM grades if we want.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning of the season. I think it's important that we do this before we go into full on player grades, because I want to actually grade the team overall as a whole at the end tonight. And I just want to remind everybody that my personal opinion is this is a tale of two halves. And would you agree with me on that? If we
Yeah,
if we go back and we look at the opening day roster, just the opening day, go back and look at the starters on opening day in comparison to what the final few games, month or so of the season look like. And yeah, James says, "Do we have to?" Yeah, I mean, it's kind of important to remember exactly where we came from and why I think this team could be exponentially better next year. I'm not saying they're going to be world beaters. Let me just get that out there right now before I get the mean tweets and the messages and people in my DMs looking to chop my head off. But I do think that they, with the current roster they have right now, are probably a 70 win team without making any moves next year, right? And you can cuss me out here if you want to, but I think it's important to look at the Palacioses, right? I think it's important to look at Mike Talkman not being on the roster early on in the season because he was injured. I think it's important to realize that you had Wally Capra playing in games where I don't know if it ever made sense for Wally Capper to ever be on an MLB diamond with the White Sox this season, regardless of the type of season we were expected to have. Um, I, I don't know that, Colson Montgomery not being on the roster until July. Um, you know, there was Vargas missed a little bit of time here and there. Um, I mean, we can go on and on and on and on, but let me just pull this up here. I'm sorry, it'll take a second. I want to pull up the actual starting lineup, unless you have it in front of you from opening day.
I do not.
Okay, so I'm just going to do this real quick. I apologize. Again, not prepared. I'm getting ready to get on a plane in the morning, so I've been running around my hair on fire all day.
I got it. Opening day lineup.
There you go. Thank you.
Miguel Vargas at third. Louis Bob Jr. at center. Benny was DHing Andrew Vaughn. Austin Slater in right. Lenine Sosa, Corey Lee, Jake Amaya, Michael A. Taylor, Schonberg.
So there you go. Michael A. Taylor, great dude, good baseball guy. One of those guys you want to have in your dugout because apparently everybody loves him, but not a guy you want starting as much as he did on your team, pretty much all season, but especially early on because of injuries, right? Amaya, let's talk about that a little bit. How do you feel about Jacob Amaya's performance early in the season?
Yeah, I don't know if we have enough letters in the alphabet, so I won't. I won't go a letter grade. I'll give it a big fat 0 out of a million. It was bad, dude. Like the worst thing was like he wasn't a good defensive shortstop either. Like he was okay, but he
He
wasn't
was
like
supposed to be, but
I
I
believe he
mean
was
that's what they
below
were.
average.
He was indeed, and
Like at
that was
least
the
Vinny
thing that.
Crapper was a positive defensive
Or
shortstop.
I'm sorry, did I say Wally Capra? Vinny.
Wally, Vinny.
Yeah, a Wally Capra. That's a whole different can of worms. Yeah, Vinny Capra. Oof. I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah.
That's to me that's even worse than Amaya by a million.
So yeah, no, it was not pretty, but luckily Colson figured it out, and we're all good now. But yeah,
Right,
no, that was not a fun time to watch White Sox. It was those two taking it back. The
right,
worst
and
thing is he didn't even hit ninth that game. He hit eighth.
right.
Anyway, sorry, I've cut you off 14
No,
times now.
no, no. Please go on. I enjoy your analysis.
No, that's all I had.
Okay. Um, let's take a look at let's just grade the outfield in the first half as a whole. Let's not go by individual players. You had a lot of Benintendi, Lou Bob, who ended up missing the last month and a half or so of the season, and then Talkman didn't come around until later on. They platooned Michael A. Taylor and I am going to draw a blank in the first part of the season before Talkman came around.
Palacios. Sorry, you just
Palacios,
said.
thank you. Overall, as a whole, before we got Talkman and Baldwin to come and do some things later on, first half outfield grade. What do you think?
Um, Let me find a good lineup. Yeah, I mean that was rough. I mean Slater was
Austin Slater,
interesting because of kind of he had platoon roles. Um, Michael A. Taylor, I think, was a good fourth outfielder for the Sox all year. Like he's a guy that you'd like. Um, Played a pretty solid defense, and then the hitting maybe wasn't there, but good locker room guy. But it was like the Palacioses. They ran into this issue late in the year. I know we were talking first half, but like Dominic Fletcher saw some time because of injuries, stuff like that. But
I'm
um,
actually not mad about that, but
yeah, I mean, I think Palacios is much worse. But yeah, I mean, I would give it a D. I mean, I'd give it an F. I'd give it an F. It was an improvement over Jacob Amaya and Vinny Capra, but No, I'd give it a solid F.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you. Luis Robert Jr. Looked pretty healthy for the most part first half of the season. Minor tweaks and things here and there, but I mean, defensively, the guy's he's a wizard. There are those moments that people are going to go, well, you remember this play or you remember that play, and I know there's a couple I'm not going to be specific on. There's one in particular that I know we all remember that was just a what WTF moment. But Trout's had a couple of those in his career. Guys like you can throw Griffey and whoever you want out there. Some of the best defensive outfielders in baseball. They're going to have some gaps here and there, but overall, I mean, defensively, the guy's a stud. You know, he is removed from a Gold Glove just a couple of seasons ago, and he kind of flashed very similar abilities this year when he was healthy. So I'll give you. I won't go like FF. I'm gonna say probably like right around a D, just because Luis Robert Jr. brings that up. Interestingly enough, Benintendi's defense actually looked a little bit better, which he's always been, halfway decent defensively. It's just that noodle for an arm that drives me absolutely nuts. And how that guy is still the highest paid player the White Sox have ever had on their roster is beyond me. When you go back and you look at all your favorite players of all time for the White Sox, and this is the guy who gets paid the most, it's befuddling.
Yeah, Grandal's number 2, I think, still, which is just as worse.
Grandal at least was the guy who was probably considered by most to be the number 2 catcher in baseball at the time of that signing. Uh, it didn't last very long after coming to the Sox, and you can blame injuries or whatnot on it, but I also think he came from some places in baseball that were run by real teams, and he came to the White Sox, which we found out during his time here that the White Sox probably were not much of a real organization. Let's just be
Not
honest.
much is a
Uh,
stretch.
yeah, I mean, there were guys that made Anaheim, or not Anaheim, sorry, Oakland, sound like it was paradise compared to playing
Yeah.
here. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but goodness gracious, those 2 contracts. Like, come on. We can go back just a handful of years to Frank Thomas and Paul Konerko and Chris Sale and Mark Burley and guys that you would think would have been paid a little.
More than that, yeah.
So I don't know. Anywho, um, so yeah, the outfield overall in the first half, you say F, I say D. Second half, do you feel like that changes much?
It gets a boost. At least Luis started hitting the ball in the second half. Then he got hurt, which hurts it. But I'd move it up to D plus, just because the offense. And I feel Mike Talkman. Actually, no, I'll go C minus because I think Talkman came around in the second half. Um, Benny was all right offensively, and he got out at the end, obviously. And then Luis played pretty well, so I'll
Yeah,
move it up to a C plus.
that's the other thing about Benny is he seems to be like a pat statter. It's like, why does it take him all season, every year, to get going? Like, last year and this year again, 2 years in a row where his best months were like August and September. You know what I mean? Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, why does it take you so long, dude? And Jamie Wallace points out, and I'm glad you brought this up because this was going to be a talking point for me. Baldwin actually did help. Baldwin's defense was a little shaky at times, right? But we got to remember that Baldwin was learning a position on the fly. I mean, has he played some outfield before? Yeah, a little bit here and there, but nothing crazy. And they come to the White Sox and learn how to play outfield at an MLB level after being mostly an infielder your entire professional career. You got to give him kudos. And the bat was more than serviceable.
Yeah.
So given the rest of the off season to kind of learn and tweak his game in the outfield, I'm actually that's one of the things I'm looking forward to next year, at least in spring, is to see if he's progressed at all and can become like an everyday corner outfielder for this ball club. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he can be, I don't need him to be the starting right fielder every day, but if he can be a good quality fourth outfielder, especially because we can play the infield. I mean, that's his position, right? So, uh, I think there's going to be a lot of guys who are coming up here soon. The farm's pretty loaded, so having something that other people don't have, which is now his versatility. I mean, he can play pretty much any place on the diamond. I think he's even potentially the emergency catcher. Um, so yeah, I would. I'd be shocked if he wasn't around for a little bit. The next White Larry Garcia.
It's definitely a thought. There's part of me that thinks he might even be more than that. I think he could be an everyday starter as a corner outfielder. I specifically left field. I just don't know if he has the arm for right field or what typically, is like a 30 home run corner position in right field. And I know that it's not a rule that you have to have those numbers from certain positions. Although I would like to see the White Sox kind of at least have some semblance of power in the positions that are deemed for power positions in baseball, because quite frankly, they are a team that should be hitting for more power, especially at the park they play in at home. So, yeah, that's just my thought. Talkman, obviously, before when he's not hurt, dude's, I mean, for a guy his age, I think he's 35, 34, 35, going in, whatever it is. He's honestly just been solid. I think he's very unsung for the things that he does, and apparently is a great teammate as well. So I would probably give him a 1 year contract if nobody else in baseball is trying to pay him.
I think he's an ARB guy.
He is actually. I do believe you're right.
Yeah, so they can really bring him back quite cheap. And then my thought is you trade him when Braden's ready at the trade deadline.
It's very possible.
If
Jamie
everything
brings
works
up
out well.
Braden, and Braden is going to be a guy that we're going to be looking out for next season. I just don't know when we see Braden. I mean, he's only got a handful of games. I mean, he moved up 3 levels this season, right? To go from high A all the way to where he ended up, I just don't expect, like, a lot of people seem to expect him to be like close to being ready opening day, and I just don't see that happening. I think in earliest is going to be midseason for him, unless he's just absolutely dominating everything that you throw at him. But yeah, I can't wait to see him. A matter of fact, a lot of folks will say he's the only bat that's worth anything in the system right now. I would differ on that thought, but he is definitely probably the most promising bat that we have in the minor league system right now. What do you
Agreed.
think? Do you have anybody else that you think is probably a better position player in the system?
I don't know about better. I'd put Bonham up there though. I mean, I'd put both of them in the top 50 range.
Okay.
Bonhomer's going to continue to
I
grow,
just
and
I guess I was looking for somebody a little bit closer. Caleb's
oh
he's still, way down there.
yeah, I don't have anybody closer.
Okay.
Of like the ready to go guys, I don't think there's
Yeah, or close
anything.
to ready to go. I don't think
Not
there's
really.
anybody that's going to make an impact in 26. Yeah, and
Yeah, it'll
I
be a
definitely
pretty
agree with
quiet.
James. He's got the pedigree to be a center fielder. Speed, decent arm, decent bat. Looking forward to seeing what he can do. 5 tool player. 6 according to his girlfriend. I'm gonna leave a moment of silence for that one. Anywho, it's a family show. Family show. All right.
Not anymore.
Yeah, little tongue in cheek. It's all good. And I'm not gonna touch that either. All right. So let's move on. Uh, let's talk about the middle infield versus first half versus second half, and go ahead and give me your thoughts fully on the difference that you saw. And this one's going to be a little tougher because it was pretty interchangeable. I know we talked a little bit about Jacob Mile and Colson Montgomery already, but I want to kind of take a broader look at that.
Yeah, I mean, night and day going from Amaya to Colson, right? As the season evolved. Um, but my drought I think had a worse second half than he did first. He came out of the gate pretty hot. Um, Lenine though I think had a better second half than first half. But I think obviously the big player here is Colson. So, um, yeah, the middle infield is the most interesting position on the team. It will be for a while, just because of a what's already there in Colson, Chase, and Lenine. Um, but B, what's coming. And we just mentioned Bonnemer, but like the big one there is Billy Carlson, who is many years away, many, but obviously he's drafted to play shortstop. So, those three guys I think are currently in your future plans. Lenine, I think could be traded, but I certainly wouldn't trade him. It's a weird position for the Sox, as you just mentioned, like getting power out of the normal power positions, and instead they got their power out of their
The middle
shortstop and their
infield,
second baseman,
right? Which is why
and
I'm,
their
I'm
five. Their short, weird, stocky little second baseman. They got 21 home runs out of.
yeah, and it's kind of why I'm okay with maybe not getting the 35 home run guy out of right field. You know what I mean? Where if I get a 25 home run guy out of right field, as long as my shortstop's hitting
Yeah,
35, 40, like we think Colson is capable of. And in a conversation that I had with James Hesterman, who's in the chat tonight with us, thanks for hanging out, James, and remaining active. He's talking with the folks in the chat. We love that. He he pointed out that sophomore jinx and regression is a thing, and it is, and I 100% agree with him. Uh, I'm hoping that it again. That's one of those things that's not a rule. It can be a likelihood for a lot of guys, but I think even if he takes a step back, which I'm not so sure that he does because I don't think he's taken a full step forward. If we look at Colson's professional career as a whole, we see that Colson was a guy who not only hit for some power, but he had a great eye. He walked a lot. He had a better on base percentage typically than what he did this season. Just a better command of the strike zone as far as being able to lay off pitches and hitting hitters' pitches instead of chasing pitchers' pitches. I think there's a chance that regression doesn't come for him. I think he takes another step. But as far as like Lenny Sosa goes, when we talk about middle infield, if you got a second baseman who can hit you 25, and was his defense a little shaky at times? Sure. But I don't think it was as bad as most folks are kind of hanging on him because when he made a bad play, it was a bad time to make a bad play in bad situations. And some of his bad plays were atrocious, absolutely horrendous. But overall, as a second baseman, if you look at his numbers in comparison to the other guys who played the position regularly across the entire league, I would say he was near average, near league average, if I'm not mistaken. If he was, it was just barely below average. So, I mean, it wasn't until it was like the end of August when you and I were talking about it, and he was still a 0 DRS,
yeah,
right? So, I'm okay with that, and I can settle for less out of a right fielder and a left fielder if I have to. If we're getting close to 60 home runs out of our middle infield, that's pretty interesting stuff to move forward into next year. So, and
yeah. I mean,
James points out Lenny never cost them a game. I don't know if I would say that. I feel like there was
There
one.
was a play at first. There was definitely he cost them that game.
I feel like there was one where there was a bad bounce and flip over at second base, and maybe in a double play ball that went wonky. I can't remember when or against who exactly, but I feel like there was
I
one
just
that just stuck in my head that was pretty bad, and it was like in the eighth inning
I
of a
think
game that was
he
close.
screwed up a play at first, which is tough because he's not a first baseman. So my question is, Colson Montgomery draws all these Corey Seager comparisons. Is Lenine Sosa like the next Marcus Simeon? Like, is that an insane thing to say? I don't think the defense will ever be the range of like Simeon, but like, there's not many second basemen in this world who can sit or hit 40 home runs. Lenine Sosa, I don't know if he has got 40, but I don't think it's insane to think he's got 30, 35.
I don't know if I'd go as high as 35. I would say 25 to 30 is probably a good range for him. Like you said, I mean, he's sitting on 21 for the season, and 21. No, what did he have this year?
22.
22.
But I mean, he
Colson at
didn't
21.
play the entire. I mean, he split a lot of time.
No, and then being bounced from shortstop to second base to first base, playing out of position. I think, a lot of guys will say it shouldn't matter, but it tends to, put your focus in other things, especially when you're going from second base to first base. The positions are completely different. Your responsibilities are completely different on the field. And I think that does tend to, take away from your batting practice and what you're doing with your swing when you're focusing more on learning a position that you don't typically play. So I don't know. I think the 25 to 30 maybe potential is there. But again, I mean, 30 out of a second baseman is next to unheard of these days. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Any chance Sosa would play outfield? What do you think? I don't know that I move him.
I don't know if he has the speed to do it. He's not that fast. I don't
I
know if he's got
also
the range.
I also feel like if we're going to move guys around, I think there are just better candidates on the
My draft
team.
would be the one I'd move.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with Baldwin, he's already kind of made the move from being an infield guy to an outfield guy, and I'd like to see where that progresses. Like I said earlier in the show, I think Braden Montgomery is going to make his way up at some point, probably next season. Whether it be mid-season or later, I don't know. Maybe even early season if he really forces someone's hand. I don't know, man. I feel like there's, like you said, there's a handful of these shortstops that are coming up. There was a couple of college third basemen that were drafted in last year's drafted a little bit older and probably a little more polished than some of the young guys that we're talking about, those first and second, third round shortstops that they picked up that are, they're a little bit older than 19 or 20 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think some of those guys could potentially learn how to play outfield if they haven't already and move out there. I just don't know that Sosa's the guy to do that. And yes, I
I
agree, Jamie. Somebody does have to move. They are overloaded with middle and corner infielders right now.
I don't want to avoid James Coogan put this in the chat. Said, do they move Colson to first base with his power? With all the middle fielders, should they move Colson to first base? The issue Colson has, and this is very much not an issue, but like everybody's trying to move him to third. So I think the initial thought would be, you put Colson at third and you move Miggy to first. I just turned off my light. Um, the issue is like Colson's like a top 10, probably top 5 shortstop defensively in baseball. I think he finished that in outs above average. Like, he is legitimately a like 90th percentile fielder at short. Like, he's remarkably good. It's going to be hard to move him off short. Like, to find a better defender, like Billy Carlson's like maybe the guy. Other than that, I
Yeah,
don't think there's a better defensive shortstop in the system.
and the thing about moving from shortstop to third base, is, let's just say if Colson, the whole idea of Colson even having to move off shortstop is he's young and he's going to continue to grow as most guys do at that age when they're in Major League Baseball. You see guys come up and in the first 4 or 5 years of there, they gain 30, 35 pounds. Some of them might grow an inch. And not PD related. We're not talking Barry Bonds in his 30s, going 3 hat sizes and 3 shoe sizes and whatnot. But guys that are in their early 20s do tend to put on some more weight as they get older. And the idea is that Colson's going to lose maybe some of that range at shortstop. But the crazy thing is because of his defensive ability right now, there's a defensive ability, not availability. And he's got quick reaction time, which, they call it the hot corner for a reason. The hot corner, when these guys are hitting dead pull down the line, you've got to have that quick reaction. And Colson's got that ability to do that as well as, being a little bit taller. He's got some longer legs, which can get him into the hole on the other side of the line when he needs to take those hot shots down the line. And he's got a strong arm to be able to make that throw all the way across the diamond as well, too. So I think it makes more sense for him to move over to the hot corner than to go over to first base. If maybe in time, and I'm talking well into Colson's career where there's a time he loses a step, but he's still got that ability to hit bombs and still be fairly decent defensively, but you don't need him to have a ginormous range. I think that's when you move him to first base. And it's a very good possibility later in his career, but I'm thinking, when he's into his 30s and not in the next 5, 6, 7 years. You know what I mean?
I mean, El Seager is still playing. I think Seager was one of the top defensive shortstops this year, if not the top. And that's obviously the guy that he gets compared to the most.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. 100%. James Coogan bringing out like draft day predictions already. It might be a little bit early for that. I'd like to see how the lottery goes. Obviously, the White Sox have the highest percentage to get the first pick in the lottery, but he asks if it could be, what is it, Rock Chalowski. I know the last name. And I
Doesn't
never know.
pass the name test. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, does he have a ugly girlfriend? Are we gonna do the whole Moneyball thing? Ugly girlfriend means no confidence. Just doesn't have a baseball face. Doesn't have a baseball name.
Not symmetrical.
Right.
I'm a big name guy, although it doesn't work for baseball.
No, I mean it's no Steel Walker, that's for sure.
Like Jacob Mizorowski's an ugly name.
Yeah.
Ugly name. But he's good. Well, I guess he's not good. That's not what we're here for, but Drew Burris is another name to watch. He's an outfielder by trade. And he's a legit, he's like probably number 2 in that class. I don't know if the Sox are going to get the number 1 pick. They have like a 20% chance. That's the only issue.
And this is 100% something that I agree with. Jamie Wallace says timing might be perfect for Colson to move to third base when Billy is ready. If Billy is the guy who he is who he thought he was, if he's that guy that turns out to be who we're all hoping he will be, I think that's probably a very good timeline for Colson to make a move over to third base. Let's just hope that his defense at shortstop doesn't take a step back between now and then.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't take any step back at all, to be honest with you. Let's hope he keeps just moving forward. So yeah, overall, first, and I'm not even going to get into corner outfield or corner infield because it was kind of a revolving door of a lot of these same guys, same names that we mentioned. Miguel Vargas bouncing back and forth between first base and third base. A little bit of Lenine Sosa playing first base. We already talked about Capra. Curtis Mead was over there. We had Andrew Vaughn for the first half of the season, and we all know the train wreck that was.
We should have came up with a game of like trying to name every player who played in
each position.
Yeah, just try to played with the Chicago White Sox this year. We should have done that.
So yeah, I think we're going to maybe we'll do that with a bingo card next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Which we talked about
we
doing
can
this
knock
year.
out the alphabet. Yeah.
So you know what, that's a homework assignment for our chat. You guys wanna throw in your like Jake and I have some ideas already for bingo card slots and squares. Um, if you guys have any ideas, anything you want to see on next year's bingo card, by all means, hit us up. You can hit me up, Danny Miller FS on X/Twitter, Jacob Thome, J Thome 21 at Twitter. Get in our
That's
DMs,
pretty
hit us
funny.
up. Yep, spelled.
Is there an actual Sporkle, James? Oh, I'll have to do that when I get off here. Also, why is the Curtis Mead era dead? He's like very young. He's like 25. Curtis Mead era is alive and well.
It is indeed.
He's another
Did
guy
you
that might pick the outfield
62
club.
guys in Sporkle? Oh,
62 guys played for the White Sox this year. That's
oh,
crazy.
wow, wow. Okay. I mean, I guess yeah. When you consider the second half and the first
What
half, it's tale of two halves.
what team had more what team had the most players played for them this year? That's a question.
Oof. I mean, we got to be
See if
close.
old GPT knows. It's
Holy
never
old
right.
Chat GPT. All right. Well, while you're looking at that, I'm just want to do a quick over. Well, we haven't really talked much about pitching. I don't think I really want to, just because the first half bullpen was garbage, or at least the first 2 months was pretty much garbage. And you and I talked about that ad nauseum in the beginning of the season, saying we knew it was going to be a revolving door of guys until they figured out some sense of normalcy. And then, of course, injuries kind of dictated our starting rotation for the better part of the season. So it's hard to put a grade on any of it. The only grade I'll throw out there is I'll give the coaching staff a C on pitching because of the way it was managed, and I think it was mismanaged by not only our coaching staff but our general manager uh, for having a time when we were down two starting pitchers for what felt like a month and a half and
So
overworking the crap out of the bullpen.
yeah, I agree. I think that was bad. Chris Getz. I'm a Chris Getz believer. First show. By the way, do you remember what your hot take was in the first episode that we ever did? Because I vividly remember mine.
I do
We should
not.
go back and look and like what our win protection. That'd be good for next week's
We
show.
could we could do that next week's show. We can go back and pull out some of our hot takes and figure out exactly where we were and how we differ between now and
My
then.
my hot take was Penn Murphy to be the White Sox All Star. I remember that one.
Oh, I do remember you saying that. And he did not even see that
No,
much
not
time.
close. By the way, do you want to know the answer that ChatGPT gave me? I don't know if this is right, but guess the team. NL East.
NL East? Mets?
Yeah. No.
No?
No, not a playoff team. That doesn't narrow down the Mets, but
I was gonna say, did the Mets make when did the Mets make
it's
the
a
playoffs?
shocker. It's a shocker.
NL East team with a lot of players.
I can give it to you if you want, but it's a
Yeah, go ahead and throw it out there. Is it the
Atlanta
Marlins?
Braves.
Atlanta. Okay.
They were bad this year, but I guess they were injured a lot. I guess that's a big
Were
piece of
it?
that, huh?
Yeah, I
They
guess
were
it does
really
kind of make
injured.
sense because they did spend a lot of time with guys, or I should say, guys spent a lot of time with injuries. So,
All right, that
wow.
makes sense. Yeah, Atlanta Braves.
All right, you want
Back on
to
track.
give Chris Getz an overall grade this season?
Um, hey, Chris Scott is my guy.
I've
I'll go
warmed.
B plus.
I'm right there with you.
For one, I thought the free agent signings were good. I don't know how far back we're going, but I thought the free agent signings played well. He signed Adrian Hauser midseason, who then ended up with our glorious king, Curtis Mead. And also two prospect pitchers who will very likely see time next year at some point. Um, he, the Andrew Vaughn trade I think was maybe a negative, but he still isn't. He's not that good with Milwaukee right now.
No, he did what he typically does. He had a
Yeah,
month and a half blow up, and he regressed back to what we
yeah,
expected him. So,
yeah.
uh,
I think it was very solid.
okay, I'm gonna go B plus as well, just because I mean the crochet trade I think is a net positive across the board.
Yeah,
It looks like a really good trade, and I was a little upset about it at first. I was kind of hoping for more, but it seems like the players that we didn't even think were going to be headliners in that deal have kind of made me really feel like he got more than I ever gave him credit for. So for that trade alone, I'm actually going to give him a B plus. I think I'll knock his grade down overall to a B for exactly what I said before. Just that I think that the pitching staff probably could have used a little bit of a boost. Right there, I don't know, 3 4 weeks after the All Star break when we started to see some injuries and the bullpen being overworked to kind of fill in some spot starts and bullpen games. I think that was a misstep. I think uh, I think it puts some strain on the pitching staff and your coaching staff to be able to try to get through and get guys to eat some innings. I put that on Chris. So, but all in all, I have warmed quite a bit over the last year plus, going into about this time last year. Well, so I'll just say a year. About this time last year, I wasn't super high on Chris. I wasn't low on him either, but my opinion of him has kind of come around now recently, and I do like the direction of the organization as a whole. I believe some of the coaching hires and the tech that's being brought in. I believe the analytics department being hugely grown. I think all of those things are a credit to him, and yeah, I've warmed up a lot, so I'll go B plus overall.
cool.
All right, I have one final question before we get into hot takes and heaters, and I think we'll spend more time next week just because we're running out of time here, and I didn't expect this to go as long as it did. Next week we'll spend some time on where we think that what the next move is, and what's to come here in the future. Obviously, we got some time to get through the playoffs before we see any real kind of moves, strategies, things of that nature to come out from the front office and any kind of real news coming out of the front office. But we'll definitely take a look at what we think might happen in this offseason. But my question to you is it is way too early. Way, 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 way too early without knowing any of these other things. But make a prediction just based on who's with us now. Win total before any moves are made this offseason for next year. If they were to trot this same lineup out there that they did the last couple of months, give me a win total for next season.
So since July 4th, they were on a 69 win pace. So I'll go 72.
Okay. I would say they're probably in the neighborhood of a 70 win team. Just based on the fact that I still don't think they're 500, specifically because the back end of the bullpen just isn't where you need it to be. But I am pretty happy with some of the offensive outbursts that we saw in the second half. But there's work to be done, and we're gonna see if gets it done, or how much of it gets it done. We've talked ad nauseum about what we think. I mean, Ishbia be getting involved in payroll. Most folks are kind of saying it's probably not a thing. We'll see how that goes. We've made our opinions on that very well known, and very easily could be wrong about all of it. But yeah, I think I think it could be a slightly productive offseason. I don't expect them to be going out and being the biggest spenders, right? We're not going to see the $500 million contract come in this year from the White Sox. I do expect them to, shore up some holes and maybe re-sign some guys that are already here. Like you said, Mike Talkman's an arb guy. We can probably bring him back for fairly decent arbitration number. Give him another year to see where he can go. Trade him mid-season if he continues to do what he's doing. But yeah, I don't know. Looking forward to the offseason. Looking forward to Hot Stove. Looking forward to the GM meetings. Hopefully, we won't be sitting here waiting for that hot stove just to come to a simmer.
Yeah.
So,
The MLB offseason feels like it's the worst. It just drags.
and then of course there's the looming work stoppage, which we are
Yeah.
not even going to discuss as of right now. We'll get into that as more news and things kind of heat up. So, all right. Do you have any end of the season, final overall, the entire year hot takes or heaters?
Yeah, I do. I think next year's milkshake won't hold up to what they've put out the last 2 years. I think it's to be a downgraded milkshake year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know if that's all that much of a hot take, considering if as the White Sox improve, I think attendance improves, and they've had a hard time with minimal attendance keeping up on that thing. So,
Could
but
be a rough
yeah,
year for milkshake.
they may have to take a step back on that milkshake just to make it a little bit easier to reproduce in bigger numbers and keep
Yeah.
the fan base fat and happy, if you will. Um, my hot take is going to be I feel like Will Venable deserves more manager of the year votes than anyone out there because pretty much all of the playoff teams that are in the playoffs were predicted to be there. None of those playoff teams are a ginormous surprise, right? I do think that 19 game improvement over the course of the year, especially considering the first half roster, which we talked about a lot today, I think is a big deal. I think it's a huge deal. And the overall, like we talked about, the overall culture being improvement is a huge deal as well. And the fact that there is an idea amongst players in baseball that the White Sox might actually be somewhere where you can come to play baseball and not feel like you're in baseball hell.
Yeah.
So there's that. Heaters? No? Yes?
Anything. You got a ring prediction? Who's winning it all this year? Not the White Sox, of course.
Yeah, that's tough, but I hate to say it. I think the Phillies are going to be a team to beat.
Well, that was going to be mine, but I'll take the Dodgers because when in doubt.
Yeah, you know what? Good for them. They've been trying for a long time. They've been spending a lot of money and putting a lot of guys on the payroll that they think are going to get them there. So we'll see if they get over the hump. But all right. But yeah, the Phillies, going to be a back-to-backer, I think, for the first time in a while. So,
Also, by the way, former White Sox pitchers 3-0 in the postseason. There's
yeah,
some
yeah. Cease pitched a gem today.
Rodon pitched well.
Rodon, yeah,
Crochet was nasty. Anyway, I'll stop dragging this out further than it needs
yeah.
to be.
No, it's all good, brother. Well, I would like to say thank you to everyone for checking in, and thanks for hanging out with us for what was another less than desirable season of White Sox baseball. Overall, the White Sox did improve. I think we would all agree that it was a much easier watch this season than it has been in a long time. That in itself, to me, is a victory. I wasn't sure if it was going to be that way, but, it was a pleasant surprise to be able to, go to the handful of games that I did go to and have fun. And the games that I sat here on the comforts of my couch are right here in front of the screen here with you, Jacob, as we watched, were much more enjoyable. So again, thanks for all you guys, and you guys, of course, our chat makes things pretty enjoyable for us too. You guys keep us on our toes with some of the questions and some of your thoughts and ideas. We really appreciate you. We will be back next Wednesday, like I said, to talk about some of the future things we might see or think or want to see here as White Sox fans. So join us again next week at 8 p.m. on Wednesday for the next edition of Hot Takes and Haters. Just a quick reminder, super chats are always open for all of our live shows, including the Future Sox podcast with James and Ian. And of course, the Future Sox Roundup with Dylan, Jeff, and Elijah, as well as here with us. If you guys support any of our written content, by all means, we enjoy that. You can find that on www.futuresox.net. For $2 a month Patreon donation, you can get all of our exclusive content. And until next week, for my co-host, he's Jacob Thome, that guy over there. I did it again. At jthome21 on X/Twitter. I am Danny Miller, FS, at same place. Until next time, as always, go White Sox.